What's up? This is Project Freelance. Let's dive right in. Welcome to the podcast. My name is Kay. Just the letter K is my production name. I do business as that. And my website is justtheletterk.com. If you guys want to go see some of my work, I'm a freelance videographer, photographer, and certified drone pilot. If you need any kind of work like that, just hit me up. Contact at justtheletterk.com. This week on Project Freelance, I am speaking with a guy named Will. He's known as Willpower Cinema on Instagram. His website is willpowercinema.com. He is a camera operator and Steadicam operator, and he has quite a cool story to share with you guys about how he got into the filmmaking industry, his education background, some of the stuff he's worked on, and his advice for you as far as gear goes, as well as some really good life advice, honestly. Before we get into the episode, just a couple things for you guys. First of all, I need to thank our partner, Liquid Death Mountain Water. If you've never heard of Liquid Death, well, it is canned water. If you're trying to reduce your plastic waste, check out Liquid Death. Go to liquiddeath.com. You can use promo code JustTheLetterK for 10% off your order. You have to get water as well as a koozie set in order for that discount code to work. So go check out liquiddeath.com. They've got some really cool stuff out. They just did a collaboration with Clocks and Colors, who makes jewelry. So they did a Liquid Death ring, actually, with Clocks and Colors, which is super cool. Trying to get my hands on that. I actually just got their soccer jersey. It's super sick, and I can't wait to grab that. But other than that, guys, a couple more things. I have 2 photography books out. If you go to notracers.com/shop, you will find 2 photography books about exploring abandoned places. That's what I do when I'm not freelancing. I explore abandoned places. I also do music, but the abandoned stuff, the urban exploration, that is my passion project. So I made 2 photography books about it. I also have a podcast called No Tracers, where I interview other urban explorers about their stories about urban exploring, about exploring abandoned places. It's pretty wild, and if you're into that kind of stuff, definitely go check out No Tracers. But without further ado, let's get into this episode. Will, please introduce yourself and what it is you do to the Project Freelance audience.
What is up? My name is William Walsh. My company is called Willpower Cinema. I help filmmakers make their dreams come true, and the way that I do that is by being a camera and Steadicam operator. So in a way, I'm kind of the first person to see the movie.
So let's just go back to the beginning. How did you first get into filmmaking? What inspired you to pick up a camera when you were younger?
When I was a kid, I thought movies just existed. I thought like the same way like a tree just exists or the ocean just exists. I thought they just existed, and then when I found out that like no, people have to actually like make movies, and then I realized that that was someone's job, I was like, holy shit, that's really cool. I don't want to be an astronaut anymore. I want to make movies. And the movies of Steven Spielberg in particular, I really enjoyed. Hook is one of my all-time favorite movies, as is Indiana Jones. And my dad had like a VHS camera at the time and would film me and my sister just like home movies, like us growing up as little kids and stuff, which I appreciate. And then I took his camera and started recreating movies that I had seen, but like with my sister and with my friends as like the actors. So I made my own version of Indiana Jones, and I made my own version of James Bond, and they're really not good, but it was something to do, and we didn't have iPhones or anything or iPads or anything, so it was like using our imagination and filming with the camera felt really fun.
Yeah, and back then there was no editing. It was just like you film it and then you move on and then you film the next clip and then that's the edit basically with the VHS camera.
Yeah, right. Yeah, there was there was no editing basically. It was just like exactly like you said, just play the next clip.
Yep, exactly. I did the same thing with our home video camera as a kid. I would do skits in my garage. So that was my thing. So I'm right there with you. So let's go into your like education background. Like, did you learn film? Did you go to film school, or are you like a self-taught creator?
Yeah, well, when I was in high school, they had like a media broadcast program or something like that, and it was mostly uh, focused on like broadcast journalism type shit. So I got to have a camera again in high school and be making little videos like that and news stories and stuff. And I would always try and convince my teachers to let me make a movie instead of writing a paper, basically.
Mm.
And that worked pretty well. and and then in high school, somehow I got paid to go film like a business conference or something, and they put me up in like a 5-star hotel and like paid me, $1,000 or something. And I like at the time this was like monumental. I was like, wait, they're paying me like lots of money to travel and like do like film stuff. I was like, damn, this just might work. So like that was the first moment where like someone actually paid me to film something, and I was like, oh, this could actually be a thing. And then it's like, oh, I should probably go to film school then. And then I uh I applied and got accepted to Chapman University
Okay.
in Orange County,
Yeah.
which has become an amazing film school. And one of the first films that I worked on was actually the Duffer Brothers like student film.
What?
Yeah, I
What?
know. And for
Wild.
people listening or don't know, the Duffer Brothers are the people that made Stranger Things.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, I was like a grip on their student film, and it was a horror film called Eater about this cannibal dude. And it's just like, even in film school, like their movies were just like really fucking good. Their movies were just like better than other people's. I don't I don't know. I was just like, these guys are legit at the time. And then they blew up, and now they're making Stranger Things. I'm like, holy shit,
Dude.
that's really cool.
That's so crazy. Like, so I, everybody decides whether to go to school or to be self taught at one point or another. I had to go to school because my dad was like, after high school, he was like, if you don't get a degree, you can't do what you want. So you have to get a degree and then you can do whatever you want. And I was like, well, I'm going to get a film degree because I want to do film. That just makes sense in my brain. I played his
Yeah.
game basically. But I studied abroad. So I grew up in the Middle East and went to film school in Dubai and then finished film school in Australia. And one of the things about going to a trade, like doing a trade in school, is that you make these connections with like your professors, for example, or other students that then go on to do these major things. And oftentimes you can use those connections you make in school to like, I guess for lack of a better term, get a step ahead of everybody else. Were you able to make any connections in school with those people in your classes, with your professors that helped you along the way?
Yeah, it's interesting. Even though I worked on the Duffer Brothers student film and I worked with some really cool people in film school, I don't see a lot of them nowadays. I want to follow up with some of them because a lot of them are doing really cool stuff. But my actual work started picking up more after I got out of school. And when I went to film school, I actually majored in producing,
Mm.
which is also really cool because you're kind of you see everything that goes into it. Basically, you're like the bird's eye view of everything, and you're bringing all the ingredients together, kind of like the chef.
Yeah,
Like,
definitely.
um, and the difficult thing with producing is you're kind of, at least for me, you're always on. You're always on, like you're always clocked in. Like I would always be thinking about like the next day's shoot and like, are people going to show up? Like, are things going to go wrong? Da 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 da. Um, and I started going to music festivals just for fun, and I would see people with cameras like on stage with these musicians, and I just kept asking people. I was like, "Who are you? Like, how are you like getting paid to be here?" Basically, and I was just really annoying. I was just talk to everybody, and just pick their brain. And eventually, I reached out to somebody and got to go be their assistant at a film or at a music festival just for free, basically. And then that turned into a recurring gig, and then I ended up uh, actually filming for the festival. This is for Insomniac
Oh, sick.
company
Okay.
that
Yeah.
company does Electric Daisy Carnival and
Mhm.
all those fun festivals. And yeah, I ended up doing that for like 9 years, and
Holy shit.
been to a lot of festivals and been to a lot of like got to travel the world and go to like Europe and China and Japan and all these cool places, and basically just party with people and film awesome footage. And that was a dream come true for sure. And just music has always been a big part of my life. I used to play the saxophone,
Oh, wow.
and I just love music and dance. And so combining film with music and dance, it was like all the fun things, all the things I like to do all together. And so that was a really awesome journey.
Dude, it's so crazy. Like, I've been in the metal world for so long, rock and metal,
Right.
like
Yeah.
I tour. We met on, for people listening, we met on the set of a Red Jumpsuit Apparatus music video, and uh I've been in that scene for so long, but I'm dying to get into the electronic music scene just because the shows are so different, like
Yeah.
the crowds are different, the visualizations are like insane. Like, I would love to, my goal for next year is to do some electronic festivals, and I've got a couple people that shoot for, Insomniac events, and so that's a huge goal of
Yeah.
mine, to do that. And it's so cool that you got to like combine your love of music and dance with film. I think that's rad, and so many people strive for that, especially people that are listening to this podcast. A lot of them want to get into live music photography or filmmaking and video, that kind of stuff. So when did you first pick up a Steadicam?
Yeah. So I had been filming for Insomniac for a couple years, and back then this is like the Canon 5D Mark II era.
Mhm.
Basically, this is like when DSLRs were basically starting to become a thing, and red. We started shooting on red cameras, which at the time was like pretty big deal.
Yeah.
Um, and the person that I worked for said, "Do you think you could learn how to do Steadicam? Because we want to use Steadicam in our festival films." And at the time I was young and naive, and I was just like, "Yeah, sure, why not? Like, fake it till you make it,"
Mhm.
basically. And I did a little workshop. I had somebody I know show me the basics, basically, and then I just I I rented this like really crappy Steadicam from like the 1980s that was like pretty janky,
Tight.
and I put a red camera on that, and just like roamed around at EDC Vegas, this like massive rave with like a hundred
For
thousand
sure.
people, and had no idea what I was doing basically. And I did get some cool shots, and some shots were just like terrible. And I don't know. Just I mean, even to this day, trying to get through a crowd of people at a music festival with a Steadicam on is not easy.
No.
So it's definitely not the easy way to do it. But I was kind of like, if I can do this at a rave, then I can do it like in an air conditioned soundstage with
Mm.
actors, um, which is different and challenging in its own way. But yeah, it was more or less a case of fake it till you make it.
Dude, I feel like that's the motto of filmmaking, honest, or like freelancing in general. Like,
Yeah,
you're a freelancer, you fake it till you make it, and then you figure it out along the way. Steadicam is such a specialty, it's like there's not that many Steadicam operators. A lot of people like to shoot other ways, but I remember when I lived in Dubai, the first time I saw a Steadicam rig was at the skydiving world championships. My first job, I interned at Skydive Dubai as a videographer.
Nice.
So the first time I saw one, I was like, this thing is so sick. Like, what is this? And the guy like ended up walking up to me, and I had like a early gimbal type of situation, like before
Yeah.
all the DJI stuff came out. This was like a glide cam. So this is
Right.
like the OG. So
I have a glide cam.
he walks up to me and he's like, "Hey, you want to switch for a little bit?" Because the
Yeah.
Steadicam rigs are so big and bulky and heavy, and he was
Yeah.
like much taller than me, so he let me put his rig on, and I was like, "This
Oh
is
my God.
impossible," because they're like you fit them to your body,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm like struggling to even walk around with this thing, and like so kudos to you for like
Yeah.
sticking with
It's
Steadicam and all that.
Thanks. It's super awkward at first, and now it's become like an extension of my body. And I love sci-fi movies, and I love all the movies like Terminator and all
Mm.
these movies that kind of grapple with humans turning into machines. And so I'm like, well, it's we're in the future. I might as well start becoming a machine myself. And so I have like a robot arm now,
Yeah,
and
it's so good.
um, and my dance experience has actually helped me out a lot with that. I picked up fire dancing along my festival journey, and would occasionally get paid to actually be a performer on stage and juggle fire and like spin
Sick.
fire and stuff. And so just object manipulation and spatial awareness, like when you're in a crowd of people and you have like $100,000 strapped to your body and you're trying
Yeah.
to not fall down or break anything or like hit anybody. It's like it just kind of, and then you do that for years and years. It bakes into your brain this muscle memory and this spatial awareness that is really cool.
So for people that are not uh, experienced in like the film world or Steadicams, can you talk about some gear recommendations? Like if somebody were wanting to like start as a Steadicam operator, like where should they start, and like what brands do you recommend? That kind of stuff, as well as like what are the what's your ideal setup as well?
Hmm. Good question. Yes, kind of like the what you were saying earlier when the Steadicam operator told you, "Hey, you want to switch?" That's how I feel a lot of times. Like when you and I were working on the Red Jumpsuit Apparatus video, you had a really dope setup that was like a Sony mirrorless, which is or something like that.
Yeah, yeah,
And that's what I use for my personal videography stuff as well. Like when I'm shooting videos for myself, I actually don't use a Steadicam that much because I have like a much smaller camera, and it's like there's a time and a place for like the big gigantic cinema camera, and then
yeah.
there's a time where you just want like the nimble gimbal action. So it kind of depends what people are wanting to do. I would say if you're just starting doing videography type stuff or filmmaking, I would get some kind of mirrorless DSLR camera and a gimbal, or maybe a glide cam. A glide cam is basically a steady cam, but without the arm and the vest.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I would experiment around with that for a bit and kind of work your way up. The next step up would probably be the Steadicam Aero. It's AERO. It's the Aero 15 or the Aero 30. It's made by the actual company Steadicam, and it has either like a 15 or a 30-pound capacity. That would be like the next step up if you want to get like an arm and a vest going. Um, I've worked my way up to my current dream setup, which is a Steadicam M1 with an M1 Volt. It has an electronic stabilizer component in it as well, which is just it helps for certain shots when you're when you're trying to either hold a high angle looking up or hold like a low angle, it can help you out in various ways. But that that setup costs like more than my car. It's like it's kind of funny. Like a couple of my filmmaking friends would say that, like, you know, their backpack or their Pelican case and the contents of it literally costs more than the car that it's like driving in.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's me. Like, I have my car, and then everything in my car is way more expensive. It's like, oh god,
Yeah,
it's a little overwhelming sometimes.
for
So
sure.
I'd say start small and work your way up, and make sure that that's what you want to be doing, and that you enjoy it.
Yeah. And so you've been doing this for a number of years. How did you find your value or worth, and how long did that take?
Yes, that is a good question. When I when I first started working in film, I was literally working for free, or I would go on Craigslist and just try and find someone who needed something filmed, and like they paid me $50 or something. I mean, it was like I really didn't I hadn't found my value at all. I didn't know what to charge. It was basically just whatever I could get. And then once I started working for Insomniac, they're like, okay, it's like 300 a day. And then it was kind of like, okay, now it's 500 a day. Um, and the rates, sometimes sometimes I'd work for a new client, and they would say, for instance, hey, we only have 700 a day or something. And to me, like, I had never been paid 700 a day before, and I was like,
Yeah.
oh, awesome. Like, once I figured out that like one person was willing to pay me 700 a day, then I would start charging other people 700 a day, because I'm like, well, if someone's willing to pay it, then maybe other people are willing to pay it too.
Mm,
And that would kind of like raise the bar for me in a way. um yeah, and it just has kept going on like that. And I talked to somebody the other day, and they brought up a good point, which is kind of the counterpoint, which is like, the customer doesn't necessarily care what your value is. They care about how much money they can afford to pay to quote unquote make their problem go away.
wow.
So if their problem is, hey, I need someone to film this thing, for some companies, that could be like, oh, let's hire that guy. He's 3,000 a day. He's really cheap. For some people, I need someone to film something today. Like $300 could be them stretching it. So,
Mm,
um, and sometimes I will still do jobs for free or for cheap, because it's for a friend or someone I've worked with, and I believe in what they're doing. So it is pretty relative. I'd say after you've been doing it for a while, you'll kind of have the middle of the road idea of like what most people are willing to pay for it.
right.
And some people are willing to pay more than that, and some people are not. So you kind of it's a little bit of trial and error to test the waters and to figure out what people are willing to pay, and in what market. Like,
Right.
depending on where you live and the supply and the demand, it will change. Like, a photographer in LA might be able to charge $5,000 a day, but if they go to like Phoenix, Arizona, where I'm from, I don't know if they can charge the same amount.
For
It's
sure.
different depending on where you go. But
Right.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
trial and error.
Yeah, and it's all like you said, like perspective of the client. But
Yeah.
that analogy is actually really helpful. Like how much are they willing to pay to make their problem go away? Like I love that. I love that. Because it's so true. It's so true. We're all trying to solve these problems for our clients.
Yeah, and especially when something's last minute, I
Yeah,
would say when something's last minute, you can probably charge 50% more than
for sure.
than normal, because again, it's like, what's going to make the problem go away? I mean, it yeah, um some directors and some cinematographers, their rate might be like 5,000 a day, 10,000 a day. I mean, the sky's the limit pretty
Sure.
much, but yeah.
So, what are some of your favorite projects you've gotten to work on over the years?
Some of my favorite projects in the music world, I got to work on a music documentary with Tim McGraw and Faith Hill
Wow.
for their Soul to Soul tour, which apparently is like one of the top grossing concert tours of all time in any genre. uh, they were super fun to work with. Lindsay Sterling,
Love her.
shot a movie with her, Brave Enough, and she's like one of the nicest people I've ever met. Genuinely, she's just, and I was a fan of hers before
Hmm.
I shot with her, and it was hard for me to not like fangirl out, and I just like then at the end I like after being super professional and cool all day, at the end I like asked her for her autograph.
Amazing.
But yeah, being on stage with a musician that you've looked up to for years and filming them is definitely a high watermark and
Yeah.
is super fun.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's how I feel with, Red Jumpsuit. I've been a fan of theirs for years, and my friend used to be their photographer, content creator, and he has since retired and or from touring and moved to Hawaii to like live his best life and
Oh
kind
wow.
of like pass this job on to me, but growing
Nice.
up, Red Jumpsuit was one of the reasons I started doing like I'm a metal screamer, so it's one of the reasons I got into it. So to get to
Yeah.
work with them and travel the world with them has been like such a awesome and humbling experience as well. It's been super super cool. Um, for you, what inspires you to create your own content, not content for clients, but like your stuff?
Hmm. Very good question. Well, one of the things that inspires me is kind of going back to why my dad was filming us originally as kids, is because each each moment that we live on this planet can never be duplicated quite the same way again. So, and I don't have a very good memory, unfortunately. So, there's times where I'm hanging out with friends, or there's like a particularly beautiful moment going on, and I'm like, I feel this feeling like I'm compelled to try and photograph it or
Yeah.
capture it or something, because I'm like, oh my god, like this is so good, like you can't, like somebody has to document this, basically, like just documenting and being able to preserve a moment in time, and to be able to go and watch it later and experience it over and over again is really cool and really special. And ultimately, we as humans, eventually we run out of juice. Like humans don't last forever, but the things that we create can last forever, which
Yeah.
is one of the reasons I love film and photography, is because it can take a moment and make it last forever.
Yeah. It is magic what we do. We
Yeah,
capture time,
exactly.
and there's nothing else in the world that can do that. I think it's so special. What do you do when you're not freelancing or making content?
I really love nature. I really love being in the natural world as much as possible, and traveling, going to places that I haven't been before, adventure. I just love adventure. I don't like to be in one place for too long. So I made this. I made a sprinter van that has like a little apartment in it, basically, and I'll, I just get in that and drive to wherever the wind may take me, and I just want to go immerse myself in a forest or somewhere beautiful that I've never been before. That always makes me happy and gets my imagination going.
Yeah, definitely. What future projects do you have coming up, and what are you working on now? If you can share anything.
Whew, that is that's another thing that's a bit frustrating at times is I have all this like cool stuff that like hasn't come out yet, but I like can't talk about it. There's a Netflix project that I've worked on that was coming out this year that I'm excited about, which I can't talk about yet. But there's another idea for a show that I'm working on with a group of guys. It's called Beyond Limits, and it follows disabled athletes and people that have disabilities but are doing really epic things.
Wow.
Like one of the guys is blind, but he's climbed the 7 highest mountains in the world. One of the guys is paralyzed from the waist down, but he treats his wheelchair like a skater would at a skate park and does like crazy flips and like
Sick.
yeah. So
That's
like
awesome.
basically what I consider to be like real life superhero people, like these people that defy the laws of physics, and they just like their spirit is just so strong, and I find that to be really inspirational. I want to make things that uplift and inspire people and give people hope. So that's a passion project that I'm excited about.
That's amazing. I can't wait to check that out when it comes out. You gotta definitely let me know when that's out so I can go gander. My last question for you, and perhaps the best and my favorite question to ask people in life, is what is something you know now that you wish you knew when you started all of this?
You've got a lot of great questions, Kay.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that I would say is that life is a marathon, not a sprint. And to treat yourself as yourself now, but also all of your future selves. So, try and make decisions that will benefit you and all of your future selves. In my 20s, I leaned a little bit more on the live for the moment kind of vibes, where I just really liked partying and staying up all night and like doing all sorts of like crazy stuff, and that was fun. But it's like, yes, now that I'm in my 30s, I realize that life is more of like a marathon, and you have to live to fight another day, and you have to do everything that you can to sort of optimize your experience.
Yeah.
Instead of doing things that will hinder you or weigh you down.
Wow. Yeah. Amazing. And so true. I often forget that aspect of life, that it is a marathon, that it is long, or it can be long if you take care of yourself and, do all these things. And, it's quite a journey that we go on. And I love hearing about people's stories and their journeys. And I think that's a big reason that I love documentary filmmaking, is because I get to capture those stories. And I often tell people there are 8 billion stories on this planet, and it's my job to capture some of those. And so, Will, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. If people want to follow your journey, if they want to potentially hire you for something, let them know where they can find you online.
Right on. Thanks, Kay. My website is willpowercinema.com.
All right, y'all. That was my episode with Will Power Cinema. You can check him out on Instagram or his website. They're both linked down in the description. If you enjoyed this episode, please do me a huge favor and leave a rating and feedback. It really helps the podcast grow, and it helps us find more listeners just like you. If you're new to the show, please hit the subscribe button. I'm trying to get these out every single Monday morning, just in time for you to head to work to start your week. It's a good way to get inspired. It's a good way to motivate you. And that's a huge reason why I do this. But I also do it because I love hearing stories. I love storytelling, and I'm very grateful for all of you who listen to the podcast on a weekly basis. If you want to come on Project Freelance, you can hit me up at Project Freelance on Instagram or Twitter, or you can email me at contact@justtheletterk.com. If you want to see some of my work that I've done, you can also go to justtheletterk.com. I've got blog posts of photography stuff. I've got music up there. I've got these podcasts. I've got all kinds of stuff. Go peruse the website. Enjoy. And I will talk to you next Monday. Stay strong. Keep enduring.